Okay, good morning all. It's midday. My name's Stephen G from Business in the Community. We're ready to go. I'm just aware that there are a few more people signing in, so we're just going to give them an extra minute to make sure they're logged in, and then we'll get going. So I'll just pause for a minute and be back with you. Okay, good morning everybody. Very warm welcome to this Business in the Community webinar. Today we're going to be looking at the subject of how to develop a responsible business strategy, and we've got a good number of people signed in now, so we're going to begin right away. There are two presenters on today's webinar. I hope you can guess which one's me. And I'm joined by Shruti from our corporate advisor team, who's had experience at working at Futera and Fair Trade Foundation, and indeed between us we've got over 15 years of experience in advising companies of how to develop responsible business strategies, using diagnostic tools, using benchmarking services, delivering training on specific elements, and also delivering advisory services. So today we're going to be drawing on that experience and giving you a flavour of what we consider to be the key tools. Just a few points of housekeeping before we start. You may have already realised that you've joined the webinar in listen-only mode, but that doesn't mean that you can't communicate with us. You can raise your hand. You'll see on your screen a hand with a small green arrow pointing upwards in response to questions. In fact, just to check that the audio is working, could you please raise your hand now if you can hear me? Great. Amy, I think you were the fastest finger there. Thank you for that. Hugely comforting. Also, if you do have a question or problem, then you can use the chat box at any time. However, we'll be responding to questions on the content in the Q&A at the end of the session. And the session is being recorded, and you'll be sent a link to it following the session. And also, we can send slides out to members only on request. So we're going to aim to finish at about 12:45 to allow 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So what are we going to cover today? Well, the main aim is to give you ideas and insight into how to embed responsible business at the core of your business strategy. So we're not talking about developing a CSR strategy with its own team and its own budget. We're not talking about a strategy that's bolted on to the side of the business and just addresses a handful of impacts. What we're talking about is developing a business strategy that takes into consideration the responsibilities of your business to society and the environment. And to achieve that, we'll present you with some models, some frameworks, some good practice examples, and also a range of questions or provocations that you can take back to your business and ask of your business. And we'll be looking specifically at the role of risk assessment and materiality assessment. And then finally, we're just going to say a few words about some of the supporting mechanisms that are important to help you embed the strategy. You'll have to think about these to integrate and actually deliver on the strategy. So when we advise companies on strategy development, we use these 5 steps. So we've organised the webinar around these. And we'll be starting at the top any strategy development process needs to start by understanding where you currently are. We're then going to look at techniques for assessing your business context, followed by looking at pulling that together to actually designing a strategy. And that's where we're going to focus for today. We're going to say a few words about those supporting mechanisms to deliver your strategy and really integrate it into the business, but mainly we're going to focus on these first 3 steps. So we'll start with step 1, and I'm going to hand over to Shruti to talk you through those.
Hi everyone. So we said that we'd like loads of time for Q&A at the end, so I'm going to rush through these slightly, but hopefully we'll cover off the main points, and anything else that you'd like to ask, please type into the chat box. So when we're working with businesses, what we see is that one of the main drivers of strategic change is a current level of dissatisfaction with the approach that's in place at the moment. That seems quite obvious, but I think it's important to state at this point. And there's a number of ways in which you can kind of assess what's going on in your business, how satisfied people are with the status quo. So just to run through these quickly, we've got external benchmarking. If you've been working in sustainability for a while, you know there's a lot of benchmarks out there. There's sector-specific benchmarks, there's global benchmarks, national benchmarks. So a couple just to talk through. So there's a Higg index for apparel. That's a very sector-specific benchmark. And then there's more general ones like the World Benchmarking Alliance, which ranks big companies against the SDGs. The really important thing when you're deciding which benchmark to use and which to kind of take forward in your business is to understand what you need to find out. What's the key question that you're asking here as a business? What's the business need? So, for example, if you were an FMCG company that was looking at how your brand's perceived by public, media, consumers, and how that relates to your sustainability, you might want to look at Oxfam's behind the brands and see how you score there before doing your own internal benchmarking. And really the aim of benchmarking is to understand where you're starting from, what's happening within your organization, where best practice is within your organization, where there are gaps. Stakeholder interviews are a really important part of understanding your current context. So usually we would say that you should interview your top 5 stakeholders, which have been prioritized according to their impact and interest in your business or on your agenda. And they can be anyone from government to suppliers, to customers, to clients and NGOs as well. There's an important business benefit to including stakeholders in the early part of your strategy development. So one is that by consulting the most important stakeholders, and there's a different approach according to the priority of the stakeholder, you can secure their buy-in at an early stage. You can anticipate risks to your potential strategy, and you can proactively respond to any early stage concerns. I think at this stage it's worth saying that stakeholders aren't just external, they can also be people within your business, and Steve will talk a bit more about that when we get onto materiality. Looking at media reviews and social media is really important for your business. There's often a lot going on within companies that is good, that doesn't really make it through to the front pages, and so your perception of how your business is doing on responsible business might be different from how the public sees you. We see this in cases like, for example, with Nestle still struggling to shake off the breast milk conspiracy kind of controversy in the 70s, breast milk substitutes, marketing those in developing countries. So always worth checking the media and what people are saying about your brand. Finally, you might want to join an industry or sector-specific group, both to understand the kind of topical issues in your sector, but also to shape your sector's agenda towards responsible business. An example of this is the Accounting for Sustainability group, which works with financial leaders, investors, and accountants on looking at shifting to resilient business models. You've also got groups like the British Retail Consortium that are quite connected into sustainability groups and roundtables. Moving on. There's a few ways to know the internal views on how your business is doing as well. One important thing is if you're a business with a lot of different business units, for example, a global business, there might be business units that perform more strongly than others in regionally or in different divisions. And really understanding where those pockets of best practice are or where maybe the gaps are can help you embed sustainability, responsible business more holistically across your operations. Then talking about scenario planning. So this is planning beyond your current business agenda. This is looking really into the future and looking at those mega trends that are going to be material, going to be important drivers of your business. What this can help you do is identify upcoming threats and opportunities, for example, new players in your industry or potential disruptors. And examples, Danone used this to actually acquire White Wave, who make plant-based milk, so soy milk and things like that, because they knew that that would be an upcoming disruptor of the dairy industry. Finally, but not least, employees are really important drivers of change within businesses, and they can also be important blockers. So it's important to understand what motivates them, what drives them, what do they think of your current responsible business approach, and also to harness their ideas and innovation. I mean, having employees that are closer to the day-to-day operations of your business can really unlock some powerful insights. Some companies actually have processes to capture employees' ideas. So RSA Insurance have the Seeing is Believing competition, where employees can put forward a product or service idea in response to a material issue, and the winner has their kind of solution developed. 3M, the innovation company, also run a similar process. So now you've done all of this assessment into how you're doing at the moment, it's really important then to look at the tone at the top. So what are your business leaders saying about responsible business? And what's your business vision and your purpose statement in place? Worth running through just what those things are. So vision is the change that you want your business to achieve, and purpose is the stated reason why your business exists. Really importantly, we're talking about the business vision here, not the CSR vision. Whatever strategy you come up with, it has to be directly relevant to your business need and be capable of driving competitive advantage. And we've, BITC's put together a framework for you to understand where you are on your kind of responsible business leadership journey. I'm going to run through the 4 steps of those. So there's starting, accelerating, leading, and shaping. But before I go through that, I just want to draw out the kind of the axis of improvement here. So broadly, we're looking at businesses that start from focusing on doing less harm to doing more good, from focusing on how they spend their money, so pure philanthropy, to how they make their money, so sustainability is a core business driver. Looking from compliance to shaping the agenda and really being an advocate for responsible business. This slide covers off the first 2 levels, starting and accelerating. So here you can see that in the starting stage, businesses have a separate vision for responsible business that's not aligned to core business strategy. Responsible businesses within particular pockets of activity, such as philanthropy, and approaches compliance. When you get onto accelerating businesses, there's some alignment between core business strategy and responsible business, but there's significant omissions that can be potential risks in the future. Again, very much a risk management approach rather than an opportunity maximization or response approach. Then we get onto those businesses that are that should say leading, slight typo in the that are leading and shaping your business. These are businesses that are active in addressing challenges, that are really looking at the way they operate and whether that's fit for purpose in terms of social, environmental, and business outcomes, and that start looking at responsibility, providing strategic competitive advantage. When you get onto the shaping stage of your kind of responsible business journey, these are businesses who are looking to change business as usual and the agenda, the context in which they operate. 2 questions that I slightly flicked over before were that it's important to ask, how does responsible business support your vision? And how does your business vision support responsible business? And is your vision aspirational enough? So we'll come back to using this framework at the end of this webinar to look at levels of ambition once you've developed a strategy. I wanted to give you a couple of examples of what I think are really good strategies. And the first one I've chosen is IKEA, who recently refreshed their people and planet strategy. And the reason why I chose them was because they're a big business. they've got very succinct vision and mission, and it really cascades down both into their core business operations and the changes they make. So things like setting science-based targets, things like replacing all lights with LED. And it also really translates into their key messages or their tone at the top from their leadership. So IKEA's vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. And the late Ingvar Kamprad, their founder, said that to do business with a clear conscience is an attitude that pays. We have to find more time for ourselves and to regain respect for the environment in which we live. So you can kind of see that as a kind of iconoclastic leader, the responsible business message was coming through, and that the vision was kind of lived within the business. The second one, this is a small business example, because importantly, good strategy doesn't just come from the big businesses. It can be created and embedded by anyone. And this is Salary Finance, who actually won our Small Responsible Business of the Year at this year's gala. They are a company that provides specialist financial products to help employees manage debt and financially proactively plan for their future. So their vision is to improve the lives of working people in the UK and US. Their mission, so the way that they will achieve their vision, is to change the lives of working people by helping them become debt-free and save towards their financial goals. And you can see their CEOs really championing that by saying things like, we accelerate an employee's journey from debt to savings, improving their financial mental well-being and increasing engagement at work. So he's also drawn out how their financial products contribute to social, emotional outcomes and productivity outcomes. So the business case is clear. That's it for understanding where you currently are. I'll move over to Steve to talk about assessing your business context.
Okay, great. So moving on to assess your business context. Well, assessing your business context requires some analysis. And traditionally, this includes tools such as a SWOT analysis and a PESTLE analysis. The SWOT analysis establishes your organization's strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats present in your general operating environment. And the PESTLE analysis, in addition, it can be useful to better understand your general environment from the perspectives of political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. Now, we're not going to go over these well-trodden approaches today. You can find a lot of information on those. Instead, we're going to focus on two assessments that we see as critical to ensuring that responsible business is fully considered in your strategy. And those are the risk assessment and the materiality assessment. Now, they're not mutually exclusive, actually, but in practice, a risk assessment tends to be more internally focused process and looking at shorter timescales. And I think I can say that without offending too many risk managers. And a materiality process should be externally focused and look at longer timescales. We recommend at least 5 years. Now, a risk assessment provides a very, very solid foundation for your strategy, but a materiality assessment adds an extra layer and can help identify new opportunities. So I'm going to start by talking about the risk assessment. And in fact, it'd be useful now if you could just raise your hand if you have visibility of your company's risk register, if you're aware of the contents of your company's risk register. Just raise your hand with the green, the hand with the green arrow. I can see 3 people, right, 4 people. That's about 20%, yeah, 5 or so people, maybe 20%. So that's interesting. And if you don't already know it, then your first challenge is to identify what are these relevant non-financial or secondary risks that should be on your risk register. Now, those two terms, non-financial and secondary risks, are not particularly elegant, but what I mean by them are risks that aren't directly related to financing your company. They're risks that can be associated with safety, ethics, security, or sustainability in general. And they're risks that can typically have impacts on things like your market share, stakeholder confidence in your business, customer loyalty, employee satisfaction, and reputation more broadly. So you need to think about your business's negative social and environmental impacts and the risks that they represent. And also think about changing attitudes to business and trends in society can mean that things that weren't previously considered to be risks now should be. So I'd suggest taking a look at your company's risk management process. It may already identify these non-financial risks for you, but there's a good chance actually that by applying a responsible business lens to your thinking, you can identify more. And I really think that for many of you on the call today, if you're acting as a lone CR practitioner in your organization, that getting these things on the risk register is a really good point of leverage. It makes corporate responsibility really business relevant, and it just gets these issues discussed at the top table. So if we do look at the examples I've given here, the first line of this table identifies a risk. Now, having identified the risk, you need to make an assessment of the potential impact of the risk and the likelihood of it occurring. And multiplying these two together gives the severity, and you can start to prioritize the risks. So in the table, I've used a 1 to 4 scoring system, where 4 is the highest impact or most likely. And the first line reads then that because of a lack of climate change strategy, there's a risk that we can't articulate an approach to investors, which will lead to a failure to attract investment opportunities. I scored an impact of 4, likelihood of 4, leading to a maximum severity of 16. So that really indicates that this should be addressed through your new strategy. Now, you'll have to decide what actions you will take for different levels of severity and whether to focus on these issues in your strategy. So for the top 2 issues here, with severity of 16 and 12, you might decide to put more resource on it, monitor it more frequently, report on them publicly. However, in this example in the final row, I've mentioned a lack of traceability, and that's got a severity of 3. So you'll have to decide what are the appropriate actions and controls, etc., to put around issues that score much lower. So that's a little bit about a risk assessment. But some of the key questions that arise regarding risk assessment for you to ask of your business are, firstly, do you identify these non-financial risks via your standard risk management process? Obviously, your aim is to embed into the process, but if not, you might have to identify these separately to start with. Does your assessment of the severity of the risk take into account these changing social attitudes? So as a CR professional, as someone knowledgeable in sustainability, you may disagree with the current assessment in the risk register, but can you provide evidence to support your opinion? And does your strategy address how you'll eliminate or minimize your negative impacts? So if the answer is no to any of these questions, then they really need thinking about and addressing. And the key point here is that taking a risk perspective should provide a solid foundation for your strategy. And now I just want to move on to the materiality assessment and just compare that. So what is a materiality assessment? Well, a materiality assessment is about identifying the issues that matter to your business and its stakeholders. And these can be derived from understanding what is of concern to influential stakeholders, that could be groups or individuals, and the potential impact of these issues on the delivery of your business objectives or corporate strategy. And I've drawn an example here on the screen where we've plotted importance to stakeholder against impact on business. So you can see that the issues distributed around that, so that you've started to work out which are the higher priority ones. And we're going to look in more detail at an example later. As I mentioned, compared to a risk assessment, the aim is to take a longer term view and be more inclusive of external stakeholders. So the assessment helps you gather insights on the relative importance of issues, and this can be really valuable for things like strategic planning, operational management, capital investment decisions, and sustainability reporting and communication strategies. Now, the assessment should include long time horizon issues and trends, which I'm just going to show next. And so the assessment should include looking at trends that will impact your business within the time frame you've chosen, which, as I say, could typically be 5 to 10 years. And this slide shows a range of trends, or a sample of trends that could affect your business directly, either your business or somewhere in your value chain. And there's some specific examples that we've listed against these. These trends could significantly change your future operating environments, and considering them at this stage really forces you to ask the question, will your business survive and thrive in this new environment? So considering these longer term trends is a really important part of developing your strategy. And BITC can help you think through this with further in-house training that we deliver. So you'll appreciate that a key component of a materiality assessment is having good stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement should help you identify issues, and understand why they're important to the stakeholders. Now, your company is probably doing some stakeholder engagement already. However, here are 3 key questions. Firstly, do you know who your stakeholders are? Secondly, do you take a strategic approach to stakeholder engagement? And thirdly, do you really seek to identify new opportunities and trends as well as risks? And we often find that companies can't confidently answer yes to all 3 of those questions. And they certainly feel their approach could be improved. And because good quality strategic stakeholder engagement is such a necessary foundation on which to build an approach to responsible business, then again, we provide additional support around this, which I'll mention later. And finally, in this section, the output of a materiality assessment is a matrix, which could look something like this. I said I'd look at an example. This is taken from Nestlé's materiality matrix in their reporting. So again, this helps you prioritize issues. It's important to actively manage those issues in the top right-hand corner. In this instance, Nestlé color-coded their issues to group them into themes. This may help them with allocation of resource and just give it a clearer picture. So you can take a look at Nestlé's website for more information on this and how they do it. But the key thing for me is that it's not just the end product, not just this matrix that's important, but the process of getting there. And I think it's really healthy and really valuable to get people from across the business in a room to identify and discuss these issues and to get their perspective from where they sit in the business on what that issue is for your business and start to agree plans and strategies around that. I think there's real value in the conversation. So if that sounds useful, there are, again, a number of tools and workshops that BITC offers to help you have those conversations and help you to construct a matrix like this for your own business. So that concludes the materiality assessment. I would say in summary, the risk assessment and the materiality assessment are 2 key ways in which to assess your business context alongside things like PESTLE and SWOT analysis. But now we're going to move on to think about designing your strategy.
Okay, so now you've got all the insight gained from stakeholder interviews, you've mapped it, you've done all of your kind of internal and external context analysis, and you're putting together a strategy. So you need to combine everything at this stage, and there's a few important points that I just wanted to cover off for how you might approach this. So the first thing is that the issues from your materiality matrix can be grouped into themes, which can then become the pillars of your strategies. So for example, we've got nutrition, we've got environmental sustainability on the slide there. Really important point here is that whatever strategy you come up with, whether it's your one business strategy or whether it does end up being a CR strategy, it needs to be aligned to the core business vision So the business vision will sit on top of whatever material, themes, pillars that you come up with. Secondly, although you might have the business vision at the top, it's worth thinking about whether you might want a overarching goal that covers off the 3 themes or 3 to 5 themes that you've picked. So, for example, Unilever's strategy that I'll touch on in a minute is their core business strategy, but it's around doubling the size of their business while halving their impact. That's quite a good goal that rallies together all the areas that they're focusing on. Once you've kind of got your themes, your pillars, you need to set objectives and KPIs for what you want to achieve over a certain time frame. And then you'll have programs that fall out of that. Now, these might be existing programs, and you'll need to assess existing programs within your business, whether they fit in with your strategy, whether they can be changed to fit in, or whether you need new programs in place as well. And below programs, there's typically some foundation actions that you'll need to be doing. So these are kind of license to operate actions that you will need to do for your business to exist and continue to exist. Moving on, I just wanted to show you a few examples of different strategies. So these are all big business examples, and that's because the information is very easy to find online and you can have a look at them. Just wanted to run through a couple. So again, there's a distinction here. So for Unilever and M&S, Marks and Spencer's on the bottom row, their responsible business strategy is their core business strategy. And they've got key kind of plans and commitments in place. So for example, M&S has 3 pillars around nourishing their well-being, transforming lives and communities, and caring for the planet. And then their goals are things like help transform 1,000 communities with 50% of stores having a community space available. They've just refreshed their commitments for 2025. I think it'll be really interesting in their current business context to see how responsible business can help with financial outcomes as well. So I'll move on to why I like these examples now. I think that all of these strategies are good examples of strategies that align to core products and services and aren't kind of standalone, bolted on responsible business strategies. They all have objectives for the medium to long term. And often when you're designing a strategy, it's useful to have those milestones in place. So not only what are we going to achieve within the strategy period of 3 years, but what's the outlook for 5 to 10 years and beyond. All of these strategies have involved a wide range of kind of stakeholder engagement and analysis. Again, as we said before, that's really important. So bringing your stakeholders on board with your vision as well. They've all taken into account megatrends, which feed into the long-term kind of objectives. And as they're aligned to core products and services, they have the potential to provide competitive advantage. I think the stat with Unilever's strategy and vision is that their sustainable kind of range of products and services have grown at twice the rate of their other range. So you can really see that sustainability is driving kind of business advantage there. Obviously, worth saying that no strategy is perfect, and there might be oversights that you need to think through, but these are a good place to start. Now we're coming back to looking at level of ambition. So you've got your strategy, you've got your themes, your KPIs, your short, medium, long-term objectives. You maybe have an overall goal and it's aligned to the business vision. How do you kind of assess whether that's the right level of ambition for your business? So we'd suggest that you could use the degrees of integration framework and kind of place your strategy on this matrix. And it might be worth looking through each element or each theme within your strategy and seeing whether it meets the level of ambition that you're aiming for. Just a reminder that, as we talked through before, tone at the top is important. So hopefully through your period of consultation and internal engagement, you've got people on board within your business. Leadership also need to be on board and need to be able to speak coherently about business vision and strategy as aligned. So a couple of kind of challenging questions at this stage that might be worth considering are, will your objectives show that you want to lead the way in addressing challenges? Are you prepared to challenge business as usual, your core business model? I think a really good example at the moment is looking at companies that have a high amount of plastic in their supply chain. So, for example, bottled water. Is that a business model that's going to stand up to the future, or does that model, core product and service, need to change? And the leading and shaping kind of sides of this degrees of integration framework really help to challenge that level of ambition. So moving back to Steve, just on deliver your strategy.
Yeah, so we've covered design your strategy. That's as far as we'll go today in detail. On deliver your strategy, I said we'd just share a few thoughts on the supporting mechanisms that we've identified as being important, and we can support your thinking on how to address these. So here's the list of key supporting mechanisms, and I'll just raise one question against each of them. So under leadership, it's reiterating that question that Shruti asked. Are your leaders willing to challenge accepted norms and ways of doing business? Values, I would ask, is the active promotion of values across the whole of your organisation? Are they really lived within your organisation, or are they simply laminated? And employee engagement is really important. Your employees they will be delivering the strategy. They need to be on board with it. So will your strategy inspire employees? And think through that. Will you create strategic partnerships and collaborations on specific opportunities related to your strategy? At BITC, we believe that collaboration with other stakeholders is one of the key mechanisms to scale up activity and address these really pressing issues for people and planet. Innovation. How will you invest in innovation for positive social and environmental outcomes? What innovative projects have you got running at the moment? Governance. How is your board organised to manage, integrate and drive responsible business through the organisation? And metrics are really important as well. How will you select the appropriate metrics to support your strategy, and how will your company measure against them? So feel free to contact me if you want more information on these, but I just wanted to give you a flavour of what else you would need to consider to really embed strategy. So before we head to Q&A, we just want to do some summary and next steps. And it's been a pretty quick run through, and I hope we've given you a lot of information. What might your next steps be? Well, it's worth mentioning at this stage, if you found the content today useful and you think your senior team would benefit from a workshop based around this, then your corporate advisor can run a session presenting this material to your senior team, and it would end with a sort of 45-minute exercise to let people identify what they consider to be their current strengths and weaknesses, and then your corporate advisor would establish the weaknesses that are the highest priority and facilitate a conversation around those with a very practical aim of identifying and getting people to commit to next steps. So that would be an in-house workshop based on the material you've seen today. There are also other ways in which your membership of BITC can support you. And this slide shows a range of services that we offer to members and shows some of the members that we've already worked with. And they support the 3 steps that we've talked about today. So you can use BITC's expertise at each stage of the process, or on a particular aspect where you think a third-party view will bring value to your strategy development. So under the title, Understand Where You Currently Are, we offer benchmarking services. We have toolkits to help you think about your purpose as a business and the benefits of having a clear purpose, as well as workshops to explore to what extent purpose is embedded in your business. We can perform a review of your current strategy against our framework, which we call our degrees of integration framework that Shruti referred to. And we also run practitioner level training courses, so full day training courses on some of the topics that we've discussed today. And these courses include guest speakers, case studies, and some great networking opportunities. Under assess your business context, we run workshops around stakeholder mapping, which gives you the tools to identify stakeholders and material issues. And we run workshops to engage senior managers in thinking about these future landscapes and the risks and opportunities arising from social and environmental trends. We also run workshops which encourage senior managers to think about how the business engages with stakeholders for business benefit and responsible outcomes. And again, we run practitioner level courses covering these subjects. And then if those two steps are in place, under design your strategy, we can run a session, again, using our degrees of integration framework to really help assess your overall strategic approach and ambition. So there's some key ways in which your membership can support you. Finally, I just want to expand on a particular tool that you may have seen recently. It could help you in the first step here, understanding where you currently are. So BITC has recently produced a responsible business map, which identifies key issues businesses need to address to achieve long-term financial value, which will enable both the society and the planet to thrive. Now, some parts of the map will be more relevant to your business than others, but this map is available to view on our website, and it explains the actions and outcomes which BITC expects businesses to aim for against each of these issues. Directly related to the map, we're developing a responsible business tracker to allow companies to track their progress against it. So for more information around this map, then please talk to your corporate advisor. So thank you very much for listening. We hope in a short space of time we've given you some structure, some inspiration, and you can identify some actions that you'd like to take. The idea is we've left plenty of time for Q&A, and we've had one or two questions in already, but you may have questions of your own, and now is the time to ask. So you can ask a question by typing into the chat box, the questions box. So please take a moment now if you have a question to type that in. Shruti's pulled the short straw here, so I'm going to be asking the questions and Shruti is going to be attempting to answer them. And the first question that we had actually was, I want to develop a new strategy, but my executive team isn't really bought into this. How do I get buy-in? Common question. Over to you, Shruti.
Yeah, this is a challenge that lots of member companies face, and I think one really important way to gain buy-in at the level of leadership is to look at what competitors are currently doing and where you rank compared to them. It's often an important business driver. Another thing to look at are risks and opportunities to your business. So not just the opportunities of responsible business, but what might be the unintended consequences of not acting on certain issues. The risk register can be quite helpful here if it identifies non-financial risks, and it might be useful to get kind of legal involved in that as well. Probably another good way is to look at your non-execs and the role they can play in influencing your board and kind of your executive leadership. One good example of this is in finance at the moment. There's a lot happening with sustainable finance, and there's been a real rise in activist investors, people who actively divest from companies they feel aren't contributing to a sustainable future. And often those same people are non-execs of large companies, so can potentially really influential people to engage.
Yeah, very good. I have nothing to add to that. Very comprehensive response. Another question is that I work in a company that's at the starting stage, so I presume that's referring to the framework that we put on the page. So I work in a company that's at the starting stage. Your examples seem a long way off in the future. Where do I start?
great that you want to start. I think the examples are aspirational, so something to aim for. Really good place to start is with Materiality, so kind of setting up those stakeholder interviews, both internally and externally, prioritizing stakeholders if you've not done so already, and the Materiality process is a good engagement process for getting people talking and to identify senior sponsors. So I'd recommend starting there, potentially with a workshop as well to convene internal business leaders.
Getting the conversation going. Yeah. I would agree with that. Okay, I'm going to encourage any further questions. Give people a moment to let us know if you've got a question. If not, then we'll draw this to a close. I'm just going to wait. I'm aware people might just be typing their question in. I don't want to cut them short. Well, we'll see if any other questions do arise while I'm just summing up here. Really, thank you for joining us. We hope that you've really found that useful. We hope we aimed it to be some quite practical views and tools, and really give you the confidence to take some actions away out of this, and certainly ideas for discussion within your organization or with your corporate advisor. We, as follow-up from this, you're going to receive an email which includes a link to the recording of this webinar and a survey as well, just to see how you enjoyed this webinar, but particularly useful if there are areas where you want to follow up on, and other webinars you would like to see in this series. Obviously, we're here to help. As my contact details, should you want to get in touch. Okay, we have no further questions, so all that remains for me to say is thank you for attending and have a great afternoon, everybody.